Welcome to the New Health Paradigm Call with Team Masterpiece. This is the month of February 2026, and we have our returning guest, Rosa Harper. I'm going to call her a Ayurvedic practitioner. I know she is still a student, but she has joined us a couple times before, and we have our winter edition now. And she is going to be speaking on the topic of the Ayurvedic. Let me just make sure I get this right. Ayurvedic perspective on disease. And I like to pronounce disease dis-ease because it's just a lack of ease in the body. So I know she's going to go into the doshas and go from there. So I believe she has a few slides that we're going to look at. So as we do with all of our guest calls, we're going to give her the floor for about 45 to 60 minutes, and everyone can send a chat, comment, or question to myself, I'm the host, as well as I believe Matt Sun is slated as the co-host. And we'll gather those questions and comments, and if there is anything that is a question that goes to her, we'll do that at the end because we'll have a Q&A at the end. So with that said, welcome, Rosa. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you as always, and I'm looking forward to this presentation. So I will put myself off camera, but I'll be right here taking notes. Everybody welcome Rosa. I will ask you to unmute. Yes, that is important. There we go.
There we go. Cool. Sweet. Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you everybody for being here. It's so good to be back. I love talking about Ayurveda, and so I really appreciate all of your time and your attention. And today I'm going to be talking, like Nikki said, about the Ayurvedic perspective on disease, how it begins, how it spreads, and then a little bit at the end about how Ayurveda approaches reversing the disease process. So before I jump into all of that, I do want to give a little medical disclaimer because Ayurveda is not a licensed um, medical practice in the United States. Everything that I say today is purely meant to be educational in nature, not to diagnose or prescribe any of that stuff. So that's that. Um, and yeah, my name is Rosa Harper. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. I have been working in and around the field of Ayurveda for the past 7 years, mostly doing Ayurvedic therapies and body work. My teacher is Dr. Vasant Lad. He sort of brought Ayurveda to the West in the 80s, opened a school in Albuquerque, and taught there for about 30 years. Now he's here on the East Coast in Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm currently living too. And just in honor of him and in honor of this ancient tradition, I'm going to say a little prayer before I launch into the talk. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahahi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So just bowing to my teachers, to the lineage of all Ayurvedic teachers and all healers from all traditions around the world, to all of you as healers and teachers in your own right. Thank you so much for being here. So, the Ayurvedic perspective on disease. If any of you are completely new to Ayurveda, I'll just say a few words about Ayurveda. So, Ayurveda is the oldest medical science on the planet. It comes from what we now call India, and it's sort of a sister science to yoga. So, fortunately, now more and more people in the West are aware of yoga. It's not just physical exercise, it's not just physical postures. It's yoga is really the science of union. It's the science of God communion. It's the science of spiritual practices. And so Ayurveda is sort of the sister science, which focuses more on the body. So, in order to have a good spiritual practice, in order to kind of realize who you are and to attain peace and bliss and all of these things that we are all striving for in one way or another, you need to have a healthy physical body. It's really hard to be peaceful and to be blissful if your body is aching and distracting you. So Ayurveda also incorporates spiritual practices. It's a sister science, like I said, to yoga, but it is more focused on how to have balance and peace in these physical bodies that we're all walking around in. So anything can be Ayurvedic. Anything is compatible with Ayurveda that creates more balance and harmony in the body. So any kind of therapies, any kind of medicine that helps you come into more balance and harmony is Ayurvedic. Ayurveda considers any medicine or therapy that has negative side effects or that creates disharmony in the body to not be Ayurvedic, to not be good medicine. So that's just a little bit about Ayurveda. And so Ayurveda's approach to health is really like prevention. So prevention is better than cure. So Ayurveda is a health science that is intended to help you prevent disease and maintain a state of balance. And so this word balance is really important. Balance is sort of a state of equilibrium, and everybody has a different balance point. So there's this concept of the doshas, and if some of you know a little bit about Ayurveda, you've probably heard about the doshas. The doshas are three: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And these three doshas are the physiological manifestations of the five elements, beginning with space or ether, air, fire, water, and earth. These five basic building blocks come together physiologically to form the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So these doshas make up everything in creation. They make up our bodies, they make up the chair that you're sitting on, your computer. Everything is made up of these amalgamations of the elements. So this is an important concept, which we're going to be getting deeper into in a moment. So emphasis on these elements and balancing them on a state of harmony within the elements. This is a fundamental principle of the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing. When we do this, when we are able to stay in a balanced state, we prevent disease. And and the key to all of this, the key to learning how to stay in balance, is to become aware of these elements, of these doshas, how they're affecting our body. And as we begin to become unbalanced for whatever, because we're constantly, it's a balancing act, this life. We're constantly kind of vacillating between states of balance as we're trying to hit. Anybody who's seen somebody like do slacklining or walk a tightrope, you're constantly like going back and forth and trying to maintain the state of balance. It's dynamic and it's ever changing because the elements in our environments are ever changing. As we age and as we grow, the elements within our bodies are changing. So this balance is dynamic. And when we can become aware of an imbalance, by recognizing if it's a Vata, Pitta, or a Kapha imbalance, then we can start to apply an opposite force to come back into a state of equilibrium. So I'm hoping this is making some sense so far. Really, what I love about Ayurveda is it can be infinitely complicated, and the process we're going to be talking about today is complicated, but at its heart, it's common sense. This is stuff that your grandma was probably telling you about. This is like folk medicine wisdom. This is like very common sense wisdom. So I want to try to keep it simple today. So that's a little bit about the Ayurvedic approach, the whole person approach, body, mind, spirit, these five elements and keeping them in balance. This is key. And then awareness. We have to be aware of what's going on in order to apply the right remedy in the moment. So, doshas. Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata dosha is made up of the most subtle of the elemental forces. Vata, V-A-T-A, Vata dosha. It's made up of space and air. And so physiologically, this shows up in our breathing. This shows up in all movement. Vata, nothing can happen without these elements of space and air. Everything happens within them. So they are the most pervasive. This is the most pervasive dosha. It's the most impactful dosha. It's the king of the doshas, and it also goes out of balance the easiest. So in the classical text, they say that 80% of all diseases can be traced back to an imbalance of Vata dosha. And generally, this means an increase. So, generally, this means there's too much of this mobile, subtle nature, and things go out of balance. A disease process begins. We'll get into that later. But for now, just to know that Vata dosha is made up of space and air element. It's mobile, it's dry, it's light, and it's rough, and it's cold. It's mobile, dry, light, rough, cold. These are the qualities that you will know Vata by in your environment, in the food that you eat. It's going to have these qualities. I like to picture the top of a mountain peak. So this is a place where Vata dosha is high. There's tons of space, there's tons of air. And if you can see, if you look at the tops of mountain peaks, they're constantly being whittled away by these elements. These cold, rough, dry elements of Vata are reducing and shaping that mountain peak. So Vata is catabolic. It's reducing in nature. So it's catabolic. That's a little bit about Vata. Pitta. This is the amalgamation. This is the coming together of the fire and the water element. So Pitta is sort of like liquid heat, and it rules things like our metabolism, our digestion, all transformative metabolic processes in the body are brought to you by Pitta dosha. It also allows you, the eyes are a subside of Pitta. The eyes are actually very hot and fiery in nature, and it allows you to take in information and process it. Because of Pitta dosha in your brain and in your nervous system, including your eyes, you can look at something and process it. You can look at something, read something, and process it as information. It has this transformative property, this fire principle in the body. And again, it's metabolic. It's metabolic in nature, whereas Vata dosha is catabolic in nature. And so the qualities of Pitta, you'll know Pitta in your environment, in your food, by its qualities. And whereas Vata was light, rough, cold, mobile, Pitta is hot. It's hot, it's liquid, or it's kind of oily. It has a spreading nature to it. It's also light, like Vata. So it's sharp. It has a penetrating sharpness to it. So like hot spicy foods are a great example. Like, whoa, Pitta, it's hot, it's sharp, it's penetrating, it's Pitta. So this is Pitta dosha. It's hot, it's light, it's spreading, it's sharp, it's penetrating. Pitta, fire and water coming together. Think of like your hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Pitta, it's a Pitta tissue, it's a Pitta thing. So Vata and Pitta. Our last dosha is Kapha, K-A-P-H-A, Kapha dosha. This dosha is made up of the water, shares water with Pitta, and the earth elements. So Kapha really builds everything, whereas Vata is catabolic, Pitta is metabolic. Kapha is anabolic. It builds. It's the building blocks of nature. So much of what we know as physical reality is the coming together of this water and this earth element of kapha. So kapha rules all growth, development, things like that are kapha in nature. And its qualities are heavy. So unlike Vata and Pitta, it's heavy. That earth element grounds us in. It's heavy, it's dense, it's kind of sticky. It has this cohesive property. And whereas Vata is cold, Kapha is cool. So think of water. It has that quality of that coolness of the water. Winter is actually considered to be kind of a Kapha time. And I can really see this in the wintertime when you see this building of snow, where snow just kind of builds and softens, this cold, wet quality just sort of like envelops everything. And then when the heat of the spring and the summer come, it melts and it produces this growth. So kapha is growth, pitta is transformation, and vata is can be reducing. It can have a reducing effect on things. These are our three doshas. I hope that is making sense. Maybe you guys already had a little bit of an introduction to the doshas. If you have questions about any of these, please write them down. We'll have time to talk about them later. But it's important to understand the doshas as we look at the disease process because Ayurveda considers the disease process to begin with the doshas, to begin with an imbalance in one of the doshas. So the doshas are everything, like we said, and they also have home sites or therapeutic sites. They have sites in the body that they sort of emerge from. And so these home sites in the body are along the spine and in the GI tract. The home sites of the doshas are in your GI tract. The GI tract is extremely important. From this perspective, all disease begins in the GI. And we hear this from many different lineages and thinkers, perspectives on disease. Ayurveda agrees it begins in the GI. So, moving back to Vata dosha, the home site of Vata dosha, or where it really grows from in the body, is considered to be the colon, the large intestine, the colon. So Vata has an affinity for space, and the colon is sort of this hollow tube, and it is considered to be the home site of Vata. So Vata's home site is the colon. And so, from an Ayurvedic perspective, Vata disorders begin in the colon, begin in the colon. Pitta's home site, the home site of Pitta in the GI, is considered to be the small intestine. So, the small intestine and also the liver. There's secondary sites for all the doshas, but mostly it's in the small intestine for Pitta. Kapha's home site is considered to be the stomach. Also, the lungs and the chest are considered kapha. They produce kapha dosha. Kapha dosha emerges from these places along the spine. So kapha in the stomach, pitta in the small intestine, and vata in the colon. So these are considered the home sites of the doshas in the body. And if we have a very good digestive fire, if our metabolism, Ayurveda would call this our Agni, if our digestive fire, if our GI health is really strong, these doshas are going to they're going to stay put. They're going to stay in the GI tract. Maybe we'll get a fluctuation in different doshas, but they'll stay in the GI tract and they will be able to be handled in the GI tract very easily. The problems start to occur when the doshas leave their home site. And just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to go ahead and share some slides so that this hopefully will start to, a visual representation will be helpful. So this is Dr. Lotz. This is one of my teacher's drawings. And this is actually his illustration of the definition of health. All of these Sanskrit words and things describe the Ayurveda's perspective on health. But for a visual representation, we can see Vata here in the lower abdomen in the colon, Pitta in the kind of the navel, the gastric fire, and the small intestine, and then Kapha in the chest, and the upper stomach, and in the lungs. And this is my illustration here. So this is an illustration. We'll talk about this later. This is the third stage of disease. But the first two stages of disease begin this in this digestive tube. The first two stages of disease begin in the GI tract, in the
Rosa,
home sites of the doshas. Yes.
Rosa, on your first slide, I wanted to ask clarification on a word. It says to be one with your, I'm seeing isness. Is it illness? Is isness a word that you need to define?
Isness is a word.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to define that for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can guess, but can you just
Yeah. So,
thank you.
okay. So the Ayurvedic perspective on disease is balanced doshas, balanced Agni, balanced healthy tissues, and properly formed tissues. A normal elimination. So again, to have a healthy GI and to make sure your doshas um, are in check and are balanced, you're going to need to be eliminating properly. You're going to be having to have healthy bowel movements every day, healthy elimination. Um, and this last part I love it, the mind, the senses, and this word means fasta. This is the word for isness. This is your um, kind of your self with a capital S. These things are in balance and are filled with bliss. This is the definition of disease, not just the absence, the definition of health, not just the absence of disease, but a state of balance and bliss. All of your senses and your mind are permeated with contentment and bliss. This is a healthy person. This is how the sutra goes. So,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And and to get there, to experience that, we need healthy bodies. We need our doshas to be balanced and in line. And so the Ayurvedic perspective on diseases, these doshas have a home in the GI. When we have, okay, so two principles that are important are like increases like. Very simple to understand. Like increases like. And opposites balance. That's it. That's really all you need to know. And the hard part is learning how to recognize when you are provoking something by continuing to experience qualities that are like the dosha that's getting aggravated. So for example, say you're traveling constantly and you're eating very dry, cold, processed food. This will increase Vata dosha. This will increase Vata. Vata's mobile, it's rough, it's dry, it's light. When you do things that add Vata qualities, Vata dosha goes up. Same with Pitta. Pitta's hot, it's oily, it's sharp. When you eat things that are hot and oily and sharp, Pitta goes up. You'll start to have symptoms that are hot, that are oily, that are sharp. Maybe it's acne. Maybe it's, for Pitta, an example, hives, right, rashes, burning sensations. This is an example that those Pitta qualities are getting raised. So what you do is you start to add cooling things. You recognize the imbalance, hopefully before it starts to really spread and become a pathology. You recognize these qualities. Maybe it's your temper, like, oh my gosh, I'm very irritable, I'm very hot, I'm very spicy, I'm very sharp. You recognize that in yourself, in your mind, and you start to cool. You start to apply opposites to balance. This is sort of a fundamental principle in Ayurvedic therapeutics. So, what happens when we don't do that? What happens when maybe we're not aware, we're not checking in with our body, and we're just going, 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 applying, like increases like. We keep applying these same qualities to our life unchecked with the things we're doing, the foods we're eating, on and on. So this is a little visual representation. Forgive me my my very simple drawing skills. This is a visual representation of the 6 stages of disease. So this is the Ayurvedic perspective on disease. It has 6 stages. Six, sorry, 6 stages. The first stage, the first 2 stages happen in the GI. So this is accumulation. Sanchaya is the Sanskrit word for that. Accumulation in the home site. You're going to start getting symptoms in the accumulation stage. If vata is getting accumulated, you're going to have symptoms in the colon. This could show up as gas and bloating. It could show up as constipation. It's going to show up in the GI in this first stage. If pitta is being accumulated in the small intestine, you're going to have perhaps some pain in that area. You're going to have maybe intense hunger. You're going to have a sharp quality affecting your small intestine. If kapha is being accumulated in the upper stomach, you're going to have heaviness. You might have lethargy, kind of a full feeling, very slow digestion. So in these first 2 stages of accumulation and provocation, where it's getting provoked, it's the container is filling up in the second stage, you're going to get these GI symptoms. Now, if you don't recognize there's an imbalance and start to apply this rule of opposites, the doshas will eventually, like increases like, you keep doing the things that are provoking the dosha, it's going to spread. And that's the third stage. It's called prasara. It moves into circulation. So I think this last slide, yeah, this is illustrating prasara. So the doshas have accumulated in their home site and been provoked to the point where they overflow and they move into circulation. So you've got these big kapha molecules, these little hot pitta molecules, and then these dry, light, rough vata molecules. So they move into circulation. So now they've been provoked in the GI. You've kept doing the things that were provoking the doshas knowingly or unknowingly, and they've moved into circulation. This is considered the third stage of disease, circulation, prasara. And I have here cravings become perverted. So what happens when the doshas leave their home site? My teacher, Dr. Lad, had a funny saying for this. He was like, while they're in the GI, the doshas behave like gentlemen and they create cravings that balance themselves. So for example, if I have eaten like lots of pizza and ice cream all weekend and I've been hanging out on the couch and I've been doing things that are kapha provoking, but kapha is still sort of like, it's still within the first 2 stages. It's still in the GI. Then the next day I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna eat until noon. I'm not gonna eat until I'm truly hungry. And maybe when I'm ready to eat, I'm gonna have something that's light. I'm gonna have maybe steamed broccoli and quinoa or something that's like gonna be light, that's gonna be balancing to those very heavy qualities that I indulged in all weekend. This is an example of a healthy craving. And these healthy cravings happen while the doshas are in their home sites, while they're in the GI before they spread. when they've been accumulated and provoked to the point that they overflow, they start to create unhealthy cravings. So maybe my kapha is in prasara, and the next day I'm just like, maybe I'll eat a burger, or like maybe, the craving becomes unhealthy. And this is a sign. It's like the doshas kind of lose their intelligence and they start to promote themselves and they start to create disease when they enter circulation. So this is the spreading stage. These are some examples of symptoms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and Prasara. So Kapha could be lymphatic congestion. This is a sign that it has spread from the stomach and it's starting to accumulate in these Kapha places. The lymph is a place that's naturally Kapha, it's watery in nature, and so there'll start to be lymphatic congestion. There'll start to be a problem somewhere in the periphery of the system that's Kapha related. Sinus congestion is another example of that water retention. Pitta, for example, when it leaves the home site and starts to go rogue, starts to get into circulation, this is you'll get hives, you'll get rash, you'll get these outward peripheral manifestations of pitta. It'll be like hot flashes are another example, burning sensations all over the body. Pitta has an affinity for the skin, so lots of rashes and hot skin conditions are an example of pitta in this circulation stage. Vata is going to show up. Goosebumps are a good example of Vata going prasara. We have tons of goosebumps, poor circulation, cold hands and feet, and then like abnormal pulsations. So maybe like an eye twitch or like a little bit of a heart flutter, dry skin. These are all examples of Vata in circulation. So once the doshas go into circulation, they get a little bit trickier to deal with. When they're in the GI, you can just apply opposites. You can deal with them very easily. Once they get provoked to the point where they spread, this is when Ayurveda kind of defines the disease process as beginning. So we talked about circulation, prasara spreading. This fourth stage of disease is called stanya samshraya, which means localization, where the doshas will deposit in a weak spot. They'll generally go for a place that's like them, for example, kapha landing and creating problems in the lymphatics, or pitta creating problems in the skin. Um, they find a place that's like them that's weak. So in Ayurveda, we call this a kavaigunya, which means a weak spot, a defective spot. And we all have our weaknesses. We all have our weaknesses. We were either born with them or we acquired them through some kind of trauma or acute condition. So we all have our weak spots. And the doshas, when they go into circulation, will try to find a weak spot. It's just an easy spot for them to land. And from there, they start to grow. They start to manifest as a symptom, as a disease process. And you'll know the disease process because as it starts to manifest, the function will change. So an example of this, let's say we have arthritis. So we have vata that's accumulated in the colon. The vata qualities don't stop. They keep coming, vata keeps raising, vata spreads. It deposits in a joint space. Maybe it's a joint that was injured when we were younger that's especially vulnerable to these vata qualities. And so it lands in that weak spot and it starts to change the function. Maybe you get pain in the joint. Maybe it just starts as dryness and popping, and it will start to impact the function of the joint. This is considered the fifth stage of disease, Vyakti or manifestation. So the earlier we catch these things, the easier it is to bring them back to balance. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But if things continue to progress, if you unconsciously or consciously keep provoking vata with these qualities, then eventually you'll get to the sixth stage of disease, which is called Betha, which will be destruction, essentially, is what that means. And here you will see structural changes. So, whereas maybe before the joint was just hurting and popping, you'll start to see a deformation of the joint and a deterioration of the joint in this example of arthritis. So, this is one example of how you take healthy vata dosha in the colon and provoke it to the point that it starts to manifest and destroy a certain tissue in the body. So I know that this is a complicated subject, and I hope I have kind of broken it down a little bit in a way that makes sense. And before I wrap up and start taking questions, I want to talk a little bit about how Ayurveda goes, how it can take something from prasara or from circulation, from deep localization and manifestation back to health. And it's not a quick it's not a quick fix, but Ayurveda does have ways to work with this. And one really powerful way to start reversing a disease process, if and when it's appropriate for the person, is something called pancha karma. Pancha, pancha, which means five, karma, Karma, which means action. So it's the five actions, and these are purgation measures. So part of panchakarma, I'm just going to try to describe it really briefly, is to bring the doshas from their localization back into circulation, and then from circulation they can find their way back into the GI where there's a purgation that's induced so that you can remove them. This has the effect of rejuvenating, of bringing those doshas back into balance and rejuvenating the tissues. It might take several years of doing consistent seasonal panchakarmas under the guidance of a qualified practitioner or physician to, to bring you back to neutral and to reverse the disease process completely. But Ayurveda does it. I've worked in panchakarma clinics for the past 7 years and have seen it work over and over again. So that's panchakarma. That's one of Ayurveda's answers to reversing the disease process, and it works. And before I start taking questions, there are other kind of concurrent things that contribute to and produce disease. And one of them I think is important to remember. It's called prajna parad. Prajna parad. This means crimes against wisdom. This is really the heart of Ayurveda is doing things, listening to the body, and honoring the natural wisdom of the body. So much of it is about listening to the body. But when we listen to our body and we still do things that are counterintuitive to that wisdom, when we still reach for the substance, whatever it is, if it's food or whatever, and we know that it's bad for us, but we do it anyway. This is a causative factor of disease. There's something about this crime against your own wisdom that really begins to accelerate the disease process. It's like you're knowingly doing it. I think we can all relate to that on some level. So just being aware of honoring the wisdom, your own wisdom, honoring it, and honoring the wisdom of your body. This is really essential to Ayurveda. And then there are so many diseases we can't explain when a baby is born with some kind of inherited disease. And like, what did this poor little innocent person do to deserve this? There are things that we can't understand. There are Ayurveda believes, and these Vedic sciences believe that we are so much more than these bodies and these lifetimes. And there is such a mystery to how we end up in this body that we're in and why. And there's so much we don't understand. And so a lot of it is just accepting that this body we're in, this experience we're in, we is by design, is by some kind of divine design. And so honoring it, even if it means putting up with an illness, there's some kind of medicine, there's some kind of remedy, and just accepting these bodies that we've been given with all of their weaknesses and all of their flaws, and just accepting them and taking care of them the best that we can. Um, so that kind of wraps up my introduction to samprapti. Maybe I never even said that word. This concept that I just described of these 6 stages of disease is called samprapti. Samprapti, samprapti. This is the Ayurvedic perspective on how the diseases go from the GI into circulation and kind of start to grow pathologies in the body. So if any of you guys have questions, I hope I made this as clear as I can, and any clarification needed, please let me know. Thank you so much.
That that was excellent. I have 3 pages of notes as usual. I have one question at the outset, and then I just, as people are getting maybe warmed up and putting their questions and comments in the chat, or feel free to anyone can raise their hand. I'll go through a few points that I thought were noteworthy. The one question I thought of was, being that Ayurveda is the oldest medical science, I think you said at the outset, and I've known that to be true, thousands and thousands of years old, this practice. So it begs the question, at least in my mind, has any of this been, quote, like updated even as of late? Or is what we're being presented and know of today, is that how it was originally presented? Just curious.
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, when it comes to some property, when it comes to the doshas and or their origins, their qualities, the way that they spread and they build and they operate in the body, yeah, this goes back to the beginning. And Ayurveda adapts to the times. So we're obviously living in a different time and a different place. And it's one of the beauties of Ayurveda is it's not, I mean, the classical texts, you'll read them and they say things that seem kind of out of date because they were written at that time. But these principal underlying concepts are timeless. They are timeless. Um,
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, absolutely. And it just brings more weight to what is on the table at this point, what is being taught now, because, it doesn't take long for something to be shown as being weak. And that's not the case here. So I have some comments. Don't have any questions yet, so I'll just take the floor. Um, you mentioned something that I also am a full believer in and that we've mentioned many times. A healthy physical body is necessary. I'm sorry, a healthy, um, I put physical, that's not what I meant to write. A healthy mental, emotional, spiritual body, I forget the word you used because I didn't write down, is necessary for physical health. So you've got to have all of these pieces. It's it's worth a lot when someone can be disciplined in their physical for their physical health. I'm one of those people, and I worked on that for a long time. And that will take you a ways. And you should concentrate on that. But to understand that we are so much more than that, we are in these meat sacks, we are in these physical bodies that interface on energetic levels, that interface with other beings, other people that have individuals, men and women who have influences on us, and just all kinds of things, and our higher selves and all that. And so I like in that Ayurveda teaches that. And you has also said something, let me try to get it. The science, Ayurveda is the science of spiritual practices, and you included yoga in that too. Yoga's movement. Yoga's breathing. It's a breath work, correct?
So this is funny. So many people, the West knows yoga through like yoga classes, which is yoga asana. Yoga
Hmm.
asana. So that's yoga postures. And the postures, there's eight branches of yoga that are described in the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. It's a great text if anybody is curious about yoga, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Hmm.
Um, and asana is one branch of the eight branches of yoga. And so the goal of, I don't want to say the goal, yoga should be goalless. Yoga means union with God. Yoga means union with truth, with yourself. And so the final branch of yoga is samadhi, is absolute, is transcendence of identification with just this body and identification with the all-pervading force that unites everything with God, for lack of a better word. Um, so that's the goal of yoga. Yoga is anything that brings you closer to God. And asana or and pranayama is the is another branch, which is
Hmm.
breathing practices. Yeah, those are just two branches of a eight branched tree, so to
Did
speak. Yeah.
not
Hmm.
did not know that. Did not know that. So again, it's there's so much more to this than just moving or eating right or detoxing the body. Like this, it's all connected. And we are so, you mentioned it was common sense, like the whole practice is common sense. Totally agree with that. And what we're up against now is we as a population have been indoctrinated out of our common sense, which to me comes from conscience, which, is in our gut, actually. And this process, the mental process, this thinking process of being able to understand what we're even feeling and what's happening and what to do about it. So it is common sense, but we have to get there to where we can communicate in that common sense way. And And that is a shame that we are in that degraded state that we're in. Because all the answers, we have all of the answers. We just can't get to them. And so this daily practice of listening to our bodies, you mentioned food, which is my wheelhouse because I'm a mind body nutrition coach. I'm certified in that. And so eating psychology is actually a thing. And so by studying that and studying how any individual does food, it tells me and could tell them once they start to understand it, how they do life. And so you got into that a little bit, and I love that. And I didn't realize that the doshas were housed within the GI tract. I didn't realize that at all. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, you talked about cravings, and again, I still don't see any hands up or anything, so I'm just going to keep going. You talked about cravings, and you did to differentiate between a craving and then I think you said unhealthy craving. I didn't write that down. Yes, unhealthy craving. We in my arena. We view cravings as we just that word craving is always on the negative end, in that we look at it as what foods are you drawn to? So that's what I wrote down. So I'll just use that wording because it makes more sense just to me. So cravings to balance doshas, we have those, or we're drawn to certain foods intuitively that will balance that. And I've taught that, and I've never known it from an Ayurvedic standpoint. But I also have to teach. And people have to, if they want to understand this, become aware the difference between an unhealthy craving and something we're being drawn to for healthy reasons. And you kind of touched on that. Yeah, I love that. Too much becomes an unhealthy craving. So if you're eating a certain way because that's what you need to do, and then you just continue on that way, and ignore your body's messages for whatever because you like the cake or you not the cake, that's a bad example, but you like the oily greasy food, for another reason. There is a gnat in here.
Or maybe that's just like what's on the what your parents are cooking for dinner every night, like what's in your environment. And maybe you're in a position where you don't have too much control over what you eat. And yeah, but
That's a
exactly.
great example because when we're parenting our children, I wasn't given what I was requesting at all. 10% of the time I got what I was requesting. And I was a skinny kid and I ended up to be pretty weak and unhealthy and
Mm.
just, not feeling like I wasn't taken care of and all that kinds of stuff. And made us sit at the table for 2 hours afterwards to eat the meat or
Oh,
eat the, clammy corn or whatever it was. So it's like that, it starts there, right? And so we learn, oh, there's so much about food. I should just do a whole thing on this. We learn through those experiences. And I love how you touched on that because that's my jam. But so I really learned a lot from just that little bit that you gave because it is I was able to insert that into things I already know. Crimes against wisdom, I love it.
big
So
one.
we have an inner wisdom. We have it. And but however, so I'm gonna add something to this too. Absolutely, totally agree. But what I also say and teach is that if you're gonna go to a gathering, let's say, use it as an example, and there's cake there. And you're going to just struggle with yourself to not eat the cake. That in the end is probably going to be more damage than if you just honored where you're at for whatever reason, because we have emotional needs and we're always trying to get through all these emotional needs and hopefully, right? I mean, that's the goal. We want to get through the emotional needs. We want to feel the feelings and, not just band-aid them. But there's only so much we can do it at every one time. So what I say is, look, you got to get good at this to really understand and I'm really good at this now to differentiate, but sometimes it's better just to eat the damn cake and enjoy it.
Yeah,
Enjoy the experience because we're here to enjoy the taste, the sights, the smells, the feelings, all those things, and not to
absolutely.
demonize any one thing. You want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I love Ayurveda. As someone who, when I was younger, I had an eating disorder,
Mm,
like so many young girls. Um, and Ayurveda just really helped me so much when I first started learning about it. Um, because I demonized food. Like that's so much of at least my experience um with that, mental affliction was just demonizing food. And Ayurveda really teaches us that all food, like all of the tastes, there are six tastes, and the sweet taste is very important. The sweet taste is so nourishing. When you overdo it, like when you overdo any of the tastes, when you overdo anything, it starts to create an imbalance. The sweet taste is kapha predominant in nature. So when you overdo anything, it starts to create an imbalance. But everything, yeah, everything is medicine. There's a place for everything. And yeah, our culture, I think when it comes to women, we've demonized kapha. Like somehow society has convinced us that we're supposed to be like bony and skinny, and that's like it's such a backwards way of thinking, especially from an Ayurvedic perspective. So yeah, so Ayurveda helped me just become in love with like start to love my kapha again and start to have peace with the cake and with the things in moderation. They are absolutely can be medicine. Everything can be medicine or can be poison from an Ayurvedic perspective. Yeah.
yep. And, and and it can be poison too, transformed in your body because you think that way too.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
we don't want to be orthorexic, which is, just this overly concerned about everything that we're putting in our mouths and thinking that, there's a little bit of poison in this or there's a little bit of toxin in this, and then so that's going to destroy me. And like you can overcome that too because we're surrounded with all of those things. So the
Yeah.
idea is to be shrewd at the same time, being kind to yourself and I came from background in my adult life anyway, being super strict with a lot of things, super strict. So I know discipline, and that's my past, and I'm just getting out of that in the last 5, 10 years. So, and that did me some good, but at the same it molded what I know right now, the knowledge I have and the wisdom I have because I've experienced in a very strict sense certain things. But it also brought me to this now, okay, oh, now I'm going to balance, and here's the balance, and I can see more easily, perhaps than most, where a balance needs to be. And that is all about Ayurvedic teachings and practices, which you talked about, weave throughout your whole talk. It's you didn't use the word homeostatic or homeostasis, but use balance and those synonymous words. And you even said balanced states prevent disease. Um, Becoming aware of that is imperative. I wrote that down. So we talk about that here too, balance. And so even though I think there's times when also being super disciplined is what needs to happen for whatever reason, but it's just like the diets and the food with the vata, whether it's pitta or kapha, it's like they all have their place. They're all okay. Everything's okay. So um, I wrote down some other things. And again, everyone, y'all are, can someone comment in the main chat just so I know it's on?
Hey
Because we normally,
Nikki, I turned off the main chat. Maybe I lost the bubble on what we were doing with that, but it's just the current setting is they can chat with co-hosts and
yeah,
hosts.
yeah, as long as people can do that, I think people are just listening to me talk, and that's okay. But I want to make sure that I'm not, and everyone is able to raise their hand and all that, because normally we have at least a few. So I've got to be Pitta. I don't remember what I am, but just by your explanation. So uh, that's the fire and water. So um, metabolism, hot, oily, light, and sharp. So I don't know.
And
Maybe
smart. Like pitta people are very intellectual. They're
I'm very
very
intellectual.
this yeah, the gray matter of the brain is a pitta tissue. So they're yeah, very sharp thinkers. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I That definitely is speaking to me. Um, so that one, let's see. Pitta would be the small intestine and liver.
I got something I can share. Uh,
Please.
I got a pulse reading once and it confirmed my like major dosha, which there was a name for that, and then my other influences in my system. So that was really cool. It was a master. He did it really fast. And it lines up with my own experience. So pulse reading is pretty neat.
Yeah, I've not done that, but
Yeah,
I
just
think
a comment.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the same qualities when you read a pulse, um, if you find, so it's all about reading the qualities of the rhythm. Um, and so those vata qualities, if you have lots of vata in the system, that's going to show up in the pulse as like it's going to have those qualities. It's going to be kind of cold. It's going to be light. It's going to be a little rough, and the pitta qualities it'll be kind of a bounding pulse. It'll be sharp. It'll be direct. It'll be a little hot. And then the kapha pulse will be kind of cool, kind of slow. All of these qualities, they show up. This is how we identify the doshas. Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And just by also explaining how the doshas are housed in the GI tract. You had said also, was it the spinal cord, or you didn't really speak on that though? And
Well,
I
it's along the spine. So like our
Sure.
spine, everything grows out from the spine. It grows out from this central column. And, the organs are housed along the spine, and the doshas, the organs they build our organism. And so the doshas live in these specific organs along the central line.
Makes total sense. And so when you said that, and I started to think on it, it makes sense then that we get a lot of gut feelings, and why a lot of our feelings are in our digestive tract somewhere along the center. And we need to pay attention to that. And that
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice to do that. Um, I'm not sure anyone's perfect at it, but that is something to, we lose our appetite in certain instances. I'll lose my appetite in a second if I get too anxious, or I'm too fearful. Like, there's no way,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
feel it. I'll feel it there. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important in situations like that not to honor it, not to eat. Like if
mhm.
you're in the middle of dinner and somebody calls, gives you bad news, like don't keep eating, wait until natural, your natural hunger comes back. It's really important. Yeah.
Yep. So problems happen when the doshas leave the home sites. So can you, maybe this was just me, but can you expound on that a little bit? Like, how could that leave the home site?
Yeah.
It's a little bit too it's not grounded in enough of an explanation for me to understand it.
Yeah. So through the bloodstream,
Okay.
in these different parts of the body. So from the colon, like there's lots of stuff happening in the colon. It's astringent. And so excess vata, when it builds up in the colon, will leave through the bloodstream. Um, in Dr. Laud's illustration, he has it going into the thoracic duct and then spreading through the body, going into circulation. And then same thing with pitta through it's absorbed into the blood through the small intestine and goes into circulation. Same thing happens in the stomach with kapha. It builds up, it overflows. It's got to go somewhere. It goes into the bloodstream, finds its way into the thoracic duct, goes into circulation.
So would it be accurate to explain it this way, or to describe is the better word, that a dosha is more of a energetic leaning that causes certain reactions, physical, biological reactions to occur in the body, which sets it up for a certain certain events or certain propensities. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
so
understand what a dosha
yeah,
is.
the dosha, yeah, my what's easiest for me, so my explanation of the doshas is the physiological coming together. I think in ancient, maybe in medieval times, they called them the humors, but they're the coming together of the elements. Everything is made up of these five elements. Okay, we can wrap our minds around that. The elements come together to form physiology in the form of these three doshas or three humors. And so they make up our body. They allow us to have a physiology. At the same time, when they go out of balance, when we have too much of vata dosha, when we have too much of pitta dosha, we have too much of kapha dosha, they start to create imbalance. One of the literal meanings of the word dosha is like fault or mistake or impurity. And that's because of that factor, because of the fact that when these, nature's innocent, nature just is. And when we start to like when we start to go against the laws of nature and we create imbalance. We create imbalance by disregarding nature's laws, basically. And so the same nature that builds us is the same nature that creates a disease. It's all comes down to these five elements, really, and what we do with them. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm going to have two follow-up comments. One is Lisa Kreshmer just reminded me that we're all born with three doshas. Lisa also is studying, or at least highly involved with Ayurvedic. I
Yeah.
know you know her. She was the one who introduced us. Babies are kapha, work life is pitta, retirement is vata. So if I have a dominant dosha, which I believe is pitta, I don't know if you're familiar with the um, body of knowledge of human design. It's called
A
human.
little bit, yeah.
Me too, a little bit compared to what's out there. Um, Matt Senna had introduced that to me a couple years ago, and I was not a fan of like, astrology and that kind of thing.
It's
But when
based on Vedic astrology. It's actually
I
human
did
design
not
is
know
based
that.
it's based
Okay.
in India. It's based in the Vedic sciences, Vedic astrology. Yeah.
Well, it pegged me so well that I grew in my understanding of myself, and I was able to just be more kind to myself and
Hmm.
understand why I am how I am, and then all kinds of things. So, what I'm wondering, I see your hand, Matt. What I'm wondering is, I can't lose it now. Okay. I'm wondering if, because human design is based on where you're born, exactly what time, and all the exacts, right? It
Vedic astrology. Yes.
Vedic astrology, thank you. Okay, so then it has to be. So then let's use me an example. I believe I'm dominantly Pitta. Would the Vedic astrology of me, then that's why? Because,
That's so funny you say that. So there is a science to that, and I have been studying. So the term for Vedic astrology is Jyotish. Jyotish, it means the science of light. And it's a very deep science. I know this much. I know just a tiny bit. I've been studying with a teacher for a couple of years, and Dr. Ladd as well. When we were in school under Dr. Ladd and observing him, he would look at everybody's chart and he could see their prakriti, their doshic balance. He could see in the chart. So yes, it's in your chart. It's in your Vedic chart, and it's influenced by these planets that are influencing everything. So, a very simple example, people who have a very strong Mars. Mars is considered a very hot planet. It's hot in nature. So, if you have a very strong influence of this planet in your
Mhm.
chart, meaning that when you were born, there was lots of this hot Mars energy on you, it can show up. It will show up as pitta. It will show up as pitta in your system. Another word, though, another word about that and your prakriti. So your prakriti, your specific doshic balance, so say Dr. Ladd has a way of reading this where he rates them based on the pulse reading. So it's like a rating of one, two, or three, meaning how many fingers you feel the dosha on when you're reading pulse. So say you're pitta three. I can feel pitta when I read your pulse on all three fingers that I'm reading with. Um, this is also how you tell a pitta imbalance, a pitta prakriti. And Dr. Ladd says that your prakriti is determined during conception. So, depending on your parents, so if you have two very pitta parents, chances are their children are going to be pitta predominant. And the season where you were conceived under. So, there's so many factors that go into it. And
Uh-huh.
yes, all of those factors somehow magically can also be seen in the chart, can be seen in your natal chart. I hope that's not confusing.
No, and it makes me think of something I've always been wondering about. So let me try to lay this out. Matt, I'm going to move on to something kind of similar, and I don't want to lose it, but do you have something I don't want to
Yeah, I
ignore?
don't want to derail you, and this is really quick. I just want to
Okay.
give a caveat because I introduced you to human design and I love this stuff. I've found a lot of insight in true sky astrology in general, which Ayurvedic astrology, that's not the right word, Jyotish, Indian astrology is more towards the actual sky because they account for a phenomenon called precession. Still, however, they're using 30-degree even signs, which is just by no means the actual sky. Virgo is massive, Libra is small. This matters in my perception. Now, is it a crime to not be like totally literal to the sky? No. Does the system not work because they're not totally literal to the sky? No. It's just good to know this and to look at true sky astrology at the same time. Uh, and that because I introduced, I feel I should give the caveat there. Okay, thanks.
No
Cool, thank
worries.
you. Yeah.
So,
We should have a call on astrology. It's a fun topic.
Yeah.
yeah, I would be a student in that one for sure. And not have much to. So, so my here's what I want to present is that to me, the time of the actual birth is not very important. To me, it's the time of conception when you are actually incarnated, and in sign language we would just do this, just be here you are.
Mm.
This is the conception of it. And the time when I was born is so many factors, and that's why I don't really care about birthdays either. It's part of the reason it's just like that. I don't care when I was born. So does like human design, I know you said you just know a little bit about it, but maybe there's more aspects that you can comment on with this. I sometimes wonder if the birthday is not actually reading the 9 months before their conception, or if that's even possible. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, can you help me out to understand why a birth would be, you'd be so influenced when you actually just move from inside to outside? I know it's more than that. I get that. But,
It's a good question. I would love to hear one of my teachers answer it. And like I said, Dr. Led does consider like, yeah, that conception point is important. There are so many important points along the line. That's an important one. And when we're born, when we do exit the womb. We're in a different state when we're in the womb. We're still, it's a very precious, a very sacred time, which is why we just need to take care of our mamas who are carrying babies so well, because this is a really sacred, important time for her and for the life that she's carrying. Um, we're still connected, from what I've been told. I don't remember being in the womb, but we're still connected to beyond. We're still in this limbo stage. We have an awareness beyond what we have now. Like we're in this in-between stage. When we enter the world, we're entering when we exit the womb and we take our first breath, bam, we're entering physical reality in a real way. And so these planets, which represent so much of our physical reality, these planets are very real physical things. The word for them in Sanskrit is graha. It means they grab you. They're like they grasp you. And they do. And we're thrown in this world and we're grasped by this 3D reality. And I think this is why Vedic astrology does consider this birth time to be so important in how their mind manifests, like how their experience of being in a body is so much tied to that birth time. That's my best explanation. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that a little bit better now, especially you're also being cut from the connection with the mother at that time, and that
Yeah.
is a very influential time, but I still have to go back to my conception time was huger than that. But go ahead, Matt.
Well, I'm very pitta, so I like all these details. The in human design, for example, they calculate the conception date based on the birthday. Like I don't think they would even consider it a rough conception date. They really believe that it's not a conception date actually in the human design system, pardon. It's when the soul enters the vehicle that's inside the mother, which is I look, I don't know. Maybe I'm
Mhm.
getting that wrong. But there's two sides of a human design chart. One is the birthday, and one is the day your soul comes into the gestation process. And so they account for that in human design, and they're connected, right? It would be my point here is like the time the soul actually came in, let's say, is a certain number of days from the birth, possibly. And so you
Mhm.
get that information of that conception in the birthday in a way because there's a relationship. It's not the same thing as reading a chart on the day and time of the conception, but it's inherent in the birthday. Okay, that's as much as I've got to share about that.
Yeah, thank you. That at least helps me to understand that there's more to just this either this or that, there's a lot more to it, I'm sure. And there is a lot of, I see a George, just 1 second. There's so much that's accurate about these systems, and I wasn't a believer until Matt Senna read my human design. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I know there's accuracy there because I can pick apart a lot of things and, just based on, just doesn't make sense. It's just not where's the facts, so yeah, George, I'm gonna ask to unmute you. And in the meantime, going to mention to Rosa, I've been asked to ask you about uh, Prakriti
Prakriti?
and Vakriti. So if you can hold that thought for 1 second, we're going to ask George to unmute. Thanks, Lisa, for um, all your comments to me. I appreciate that. Okay, George, you should be able to unmute. There we go.
I'm hearing.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. I just was wondering, in all of this, is there anything that would have an effect or matter as to where you were talking about the conception of the birth of you coming out, whether it would matter if the male and the female were however attached, if it was just friendly attachment and having, consummated, the birth, or they were just friends, or if it were somebody that was married or not married, or someone again with maybe raped or something like that, would that make a difference as to how your everything about you comes out in your life, and how how it's formed? I was just wondering if that has any effect or on it.
It all factors have an effect. So yes. And yeah, in school we learned so it's a lot of it has to do with the quality of the seed and the quality of the egg, right? Like what are the qualities of these things? This is going to affect how the zygote forms, how the human turns out. So these
Also,
qualities, yeah.
it's
Mhm.
like if you don't know who one of the parents were, if like say I don't know who my father was, and you
Mm,
never are really going to find out because the mother doesn't want to talk about it or explain
yeah.
it. That must have some kind of effect. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And so much is a mystery, so much about how we incarnate, why we incarnate into the certain situations that we come in. It's a mystery. It's kind of supposed to be a mystery, but it's all on purpose. And people who, you know way more than I do, people who have gone through all of the 8 limbs of yoga and who have experienced maybe states of awareness beyond what most of us know, maybe they can see these things. Great yogis will say that they remember being in the womb, they remember before all of their lives. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, like like he explains these things to Arjuna, how he remembers all of these things because he has that level of awareness, and that level of awareness comes to us at the time when we need it based on our desire and our effort. So yeah, so much of it is a mystery about why. Why would a soul choose to come into this particular situation? My simple explanation is it's it's about balance. You're balancing for something. It's all nature's constantly trying to strike balance, and I think that we enter the bodies and the lives that we enter into as a progression and a continuation of that balancing act, which came from something before. Um, I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Yeah,
That's
because
what I.
also it's like when you're growing up, you go, if you don't know, it's like, why am I like this? Or what was the reason that I'm like this? Because if you don't know, you only know half of what you are, and the other half is just missing completely. It's like you're left in this unknown, uh, I don't know, paradigm or whatever, as to what happened or why. You do so many questions.
So many questions. Absolutely. Yeah. When it comes to listening to ourselves and so much about Ayurveda is about awareness, I think it's interesting to notice what things you're drawn to. Like what things in this life, inexplicably, without any influence from my culture or my upbringing, I was drawn to India. I was just drawn was drawn to Indian food. I was drawn to Indian people. I was drawn to like Indian teachers. I just found them and wanted to be next to them, to be near them. And the only explanation I can come up with is it comes from some past experience, some past life still influencing me. In the Vedic traditions, they say that like we drop our bodies when we die. This is just the Vedic perspective, and but our minds go with us. Our subtle bodies go with us from lifetime to lifetime until whatever, until we resolve, until we no longer have a need to reincarnate. So yeah, so your situations, your manas prakruti, your which I'll get to that prakruti vikruti question. The state of your mind goes with you from lifetime to lifetime. And so,
Because like with myself, I don't know how I got a lot of what I have because I didn't go to school for it. And I was just kind of watch somebody do something. That's how I learned something. And you wonder why. Well, I'm a cabinet maker, a furniture maker. I'm a songwriter, a singer, songwriter, performer, and I don't. It was just brought on me, and I just learned and did it more and more and more myself. But how it came about, why am I doing that? I don't understand how I am what I am or whatever. So
yeah, it's a mystery, but yeah, it's a beautiful mystery. Mhm.
Can you get to that one
Pro
question that I was asking?
Yeah, so prakriti, we've
Yeah.
mentioned that word a few times. And prakriti, we were talking about it earlier. Prakriti is your unique state of balance. It's kind of your prakriti is another word for nature. So it is your individual nature. So maybe Nikki has more pitta and maybe some vata and then maybe a little less kapha. And this is her prakriti.
Mm.
So the way that my teacher would describe it would be like maybe you're Vata 2, Pitta 3, Kapha 1. Like those are the ratios.
Like a
You kind of
constitution? Could you
yeah,
say it like it's your
you could
constitution?
roughly say that that's your Prakriti, that's your constitution. Thank you. That's a good word for it. Vikruti means an imbalance. What's currently happening? Dr. Lad will say there's no Prakriti without Vikruti because things are constantly shifting, the wind's constantly blowing one way or another. And so maybe because you've been traveling and moving around a lot and doing things that are Vata in nature, your Vata might be high. So maybe when we read your pulse, we'd say your Vata is instead of 2, it's 2.5. Maybe Pitta is also a little high. Maybe Kapha is the same. So this is the current state of the doshas because the doshas as we eat, as the seasons changed, I think you said Lisa mentioned this, like as we age, like the doshas have different influences on us. So they're constantly changing. And the current state of your dosha or the state of imbalance is considered your vikruti. So this is one of the problems with like dosha quizzes is people will take a dosha quiz based on how they feel right now, and maybe their vata is really high, but they're naturally a pitta person, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a vata, like I'm vata," because all their symptoms, all their imbalance symptoms is what they're answering for on the quiz, and that's reflecting more of the imbalance. It's one of my issues where I don't always believe like the dosha quizzes when people say, "Oh, I know my dosha because I took a quiz." They're probably reading their imbalance rather than their natural
Yeah.
state.
That's a good point. Somebody wrote me a comment. I wonder if it's true. Does Pitta mean father?
No, well, I think so. Pitta is spelled Pitta, Pitta
Right?
dosha, Pitta. And then I think maybe there is a Sanskrit word for father that's Pita. Um, but no, it does not directly
Okay,
mean
so those are
father.
unrelated. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So Lisa reminded me too that Vedic astrology is based on the moon rather than the sun.
Well, it's based on all of the planets, but they give more emphasis. Western astrology emphasizes the sun, and
Mm-hmm.
Vedic astrology has more emphasis on the moon.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, yeah, it's always everything is influential and connected there. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so the main focus, I guess, is different. I was supposed to ask you about Kriya yoga. Kriya yoga?
Yeah, yeah. So it's the only yoga, like formal yoga mentioned in the Yoga Sutra Patanjali, Kriya Yoga. And it's the type of yoga that I practice. And Kriya literally means work, the work of the soul. So Kri is a root, a Sanskrit root, which means like to do, to work, to effort. And Ya is a Sanskrit root that means soul. So it's like to work towards the soul, to work the work of the soul. And it's a type of yoga. Many people use the word Kriya. Again, Kriya can just mean like an action. So I know in certain types of yoga, they'll talk about Kriyas. But Kriya Yoga in the Yoga Sutra, the second chapter, verse 1, Kriya Yoga, it says Kriya Yoga is tapas, which means austerities or working. You could say discipline, self-discipline. Svadhyaya, which means self-study or self-inquiry. And Ishvara Pranidhana, which means surrender to God. So, Kriya Yoga, the definition of that from the Yoga Sutras is discipline, self-discipline, self-study, and then surrendering to the God of your understanding. Um, and then you can learn, there's a practice called Kriya Yoga. I practice through the lineage of Kriya Yoga International. Kriya Yoga International. They'll teach you how to do this practice of Kriya Yoga. They have teachers all over the world. Highly, highly recommend it if it calls to you. Yeah.
I, I remember just now that you can tell me if it's true, that yoga, I don't know which of the eight, but in general, was the main reason, or not the main goal of that was for as a pre-meditation practice. The goal was
Asana.
to
Yeah.
meditate. Okay, so asana.
Yeah,
Did I say
asana.
meditate?
It's kind of
Meditate.
like you're working out the kinks so that you can sit still. Like if you
Ah,
sit still and you have a bunch of your body's all like, it wants to move and like you need to start like it's to really work the body so you can forget about the body. That's the
uh,
goal. It's not to like get a firm butt or whatever like, most of us
yeah, no.
in the West go to yoga classes for. It's really so that you can sit and be still and meditate and realize who you are. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we definitely see yoga here as exercise. Well, not just exercise, but it's also stretching, and I mean, I understand all that too. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's even just a smidgen of what it really was meant to be.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad practice. One of our teammates does yoga regularly, and yeah, so it's a good thing, and I did
It's
it
so
for
good.
a few
Yeah. And
years.
there's
Yeah,
there's yoga asanas that can help to, it can be a part of bringing the disease, helping to cure disease is doing a practice that helps to balance the doshas through, yeah, through asana. There's so much medicine um, in intelligent use of yoga asana. It can do so much good. Yeah, absolutely.
it's not easy. I was doing it when I was younger and limberer, even. And it was difficult, and to understand how tight everyone's hips are. Like mine are super
Mm.
tight, and emotions are held there. A lot of sexual
Mhm.
emotions are held there.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Dr. Laud would say unresolved emotions
Mhm.
crystallize in the connective tissue.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to really work our connective tissue and open and stretch, yeah, does so much good.
Yeah, my understanding is that those unprocessed emotions actually have a chemical identity, and that's how they
Mm.
become physical and get stuck. Is there is an actual a chemical element there, and we're just talking about yoga now, getting into those poses and breathing through it. It's not just the pose, it's the breath work that really is the goal.
And the
That is,
awareness that comes, yeah.
yeah, yeah, sure, yep. Oh, I love it. Yeah, but I'm never gonna let you go. I wanted a year of you and I want 5. Okay, let me just go through my notes. Lastly, and I'm told I have a Vata body. I'm not sure what that exactly means, if that's my tall, slender, I don't know. Or if you're saying you think I'm a Vata type, I don't know. Okay, so anything can be used with Ayurvedic practice. I love that. You don't have
Anything that
to
creates
choose.
harmony, yeah, it does not
Right.
create harm, does no harm.
hmm hmm. One last one I like. Disease process starts in a weak spot. So everything that I've looked at will point to that. German New Medicine will point to that. Common sense will point to that. Where is your weak link?
Yep.
That's where your even if it's an emotional block. And
Hmm.
that's why when you unblock emotional stuff, blocks, that could uh, instigate, or my words are failing me, a healing process, right?
Hmm.
So there's so much to that. Oh my, okay, going dark here. That that's why also working on focusing on, not overly in a healthy way, where your weak links are.
Hmm.
And it's how I work with people too. Where can
Yeah.
we bring up where can we have the best bang for your buck? Because that's always going to be dragging. It's going to be an anchor. So you start there. And it could
Yeah.
it could be the physical, like in Masterpiece. People are coming to us sometimes and they're just a mess, and it's just like, if you could just take the drops, just start there. Something easy. You might feel just a huge relief, right? And that will help you to get to these deeper levels.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that weak spot. And then, so from an Ayurvedic perspective, recognizing what qualities are showing up in that weak spot. So, if it's Vata, if it's Pitta, if it's Kapha, and Vata again, if it's dry, if it's like for if going back to the joint, if it's dryness, it's Vata. So doing things that balance Vata, balancing with opposites. If it's Pitta, it's going to show inflammation. Inflammation is Pitta. So if that disease process is beginning as inflammation, knowing how to balance and apply the opposites. If it's Kapha, it'll be um, like solidification, tumor formation. It'll be like a congestion. It'll be like solid and building and knowing how to balance for that. Yeah.
Interesting. I think the takeaway in the message today is balance.
Balance.
Mhm,
Sama. Hmm.
mhm. Yeah. Dis-ease, and that matches my definition, or my like the way I like to use the word. Dis-ease is a lack of ease, a lack of homeostasis, a lack of, and and you normalize that, and I like that too. That's what we're doing here. Our bodies do it really, really well. We try to fight that sometimes by stopping symptoms, but we should try to be going with the flow as well of life, and understanding that that's just part of life, and just to be kind about it, and to know when we need to intervene, and that's the game. That's the whole, like, that's what we're here for. So yeah, it's all about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Go
Hmm.
ahead, Matt. I'll let you get the last comment in.
I just got clear on what I was unsure about, something I was saying. Not the most important point. I love how you just, summed up the meeting. I don't mean to disrespect that.
No worries.
Human design, because of course there's a different length of time between conception and birth for different couples, uh, at least as far as I'm aware. Human design is saying that there is a certain day where you really enter the little thing in the mother's womb. Um, that is a certain number of days before you actually get born. It's a very far out assertion, but that is in human design, and that's why it's not so clearly wrong, as there's a certain number of days between conception and birth always.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so again, I'll just say, yeah, so summing up as balance, and um I really appreciate the summation of all the doshas in the way that I think you at the first meeting you kind of summed it up too, but this was great to know a little bit more about that. So we'll talk about or think about what we want to do next for our spring edition and have you back in about 3 months if that works for you.
It sounds
But,
great. Yeah, maybe we could talk about more about how to the Ayurvedic perspective on bringing restoring health when there's been an imbalance, maybe.
yeah, and maybe touch on a little bit of the Vedic astrology,
That would be fun. I'm
I
a
would like
I'm a
that.
beginner, but I'd be happy to
Okay.
break down some of the basics. Yeah.
Well, I am too. I mean, I'd be like fresh slate, so I would want the basics, so that would be good. All
Cool.
right, cool. All right, well, thanks everybody for your kind attention, and Rosa, we just so appreciate you, and we're gonna have you back, and I wish you well in between now and then, and we'll be in touch though.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much.